Hey everybody, how we doing today? So today's video is a beginner's guide to catching a Florida Keys Tarpon number 3. It's all about the bait. So I think today what I'm going to do is to head out and see if I could round up all 4 of the primary baits that we utilize in the Florida Keys for tarpon. One would be the blue crab, mullet, pinfish, and my added favorite, which is the grunt. And those are kind of the 4 primary live baits utilized to catch the tarpon down here. So let me show you how I catch them and give you a little description of how I rig them.
This guy is hauling butt towards us. He really wants to get caught. He was aggressive. Now this dude is borderline big for tarpon. It's still workable. I'd probably want a little bit smaller, but not horribly off. Still be usable. So this is the blue crab. You can see compared to my hand size. So this is actually a doable tarpon size. Remember, 75, 100 pounders, so this is not that big of a deal, especially their mouths are this big. I actually probably would say this is at the higher end of the size to go. Down to probably silver dollar is about the ratio that I like to use with them. Now before you start using these, you can tell if they're male or female by this organ right here, this little flap. If it's real skinny like that, that's a male. If it's got a wide and then a small tip, then that's a female. So it would come down just a little bit narrow and then it would widen out, and that would be a female. Also, you want to make sure that even if you get a female, that they don't have eggs underneath here. Definitely want to throw those back. I generally don't use females regardless. I throw them back, but it's up to your call there. Before you use them, you do have to prep them, and you do that by removing the claws. That's for your safety, and plus it kind of makes it a little bit more attractive for the tarpon. So all you're going to do is grab a joint with the pliers, and then as soon as you crunch it, that basically will, whoops, it basically makes it fall off. So we're just going to grab that shoulder there. Oops, if I can grab it. There it goes. Okay, so that knocks the claws off. Makes it a little bit safer to handle now. Then we're going to get the hook. And you're going to see on the shell there, this one's easier to see here. So there's like a dark rim that goes along the edge, and then you have more of the white body. We're going to go right towards the corner of the shell and go from the underside out with the hook. And you're going to want to locate the hook and start it right where that white borders the gray, because that white part will be a little bit of a softer spot. And then just going to get the point, you're going to start it, it'll crack easy enough. Then the outer shell is the harder one, so you're going to want to kind of drill a hole through that outer shell by just gently just twisting it, and just slowly keep twisting it and drilling your way through that shell. As you can see, the hook point has already come through. Now it's just a matter of getting the barb, so just put a little bit of pressure and twist until it pops through, and boom, that crab is ready. And you're ready to just toss it out. Generally you want to fish these under a float because the crabs can swim, but a lot of times they'll go straight down, and you don't want them to go straight down to the bottom. You want to have them kind of dangling up in the top and mid water columns, because remember, tarpon are up feeders, so they're down on the bottom looking up, and they see this guy just swimming around, and they'll come up and chomp it. So that's your blue crab. What I'm using to catch the blue crabs is this little cheap net I got at Kmart for like $8 or something like that. Then I took off the fishing net style, the 1-inch hole ones, and replaced it with a laundry bag. And that's because I use it for blue crabs, but also shrimp at nighttime for live shrimp. So, but works perfectly, and like I said, every time I catch one, that's another $3. Too far. The next bait on the menu is grunts, and I love catching grunts. I love using them for bait. They're a schooling fish, and unlike pinfish that like to hide out in the grass, These like to hang out in more sandy spots, sandy edges, so a lot of times I'll catch them right at the edge where a grass flat ends into more sand, or along mangroves where there's mangrove roots where there's sand as well. And all we're going to use is my general Pinfish rig, which is basically an egg sinker to a swivel, and then just a little short piece of light trout line lure leader, a number 12 long shank hook, and then a little piece of squid on the end there. And the long shank hook is made so that if they swallow it, it's easier to remove, and then you don't lose that many bait fish that way. So we're just going to identify the spots where the grunts are, and different from where the mangrove snappers are, and we're just going to drop that down in there, wait for them to take it, and hope we've got a grunt. Perfect. And that there, my friends, is our target species, the grunt. What did grunts say? That's what grunts say. And that's the benefit of the long shank hook, is that even though he took it in there, it's still easily removed. And we've got our bait, the beautiful grunt. Now for grunts, I rig them up 2 different ways. If I am, both ways I'm going to run it under a bobber, because again, these are another one of the bottom dwellers, so they'll automatically start swimming down. So if you cast it without a bobber, it'll just go straight to the bottom and hang you up and hide. So you want to put it on a bobber that suspends a mid to high water column. The 2 places I hook them are right in the top shoulder. You don't need to go really far down. Just got to get past the scales there, and then out the other side. And then you want to make sure you always clear that hook point, because those scales will prevent the penetration. So that's the first one there, and that'll keep him perpendicular in the water column with the bobber just holding him up like that, and it can swim naturally. The other way that I hook them is in the mouth and then out one of the nostrils. And you can kind of see the front part of their mouth where the teeth are is very hard. But if you go a little bit past that, then it becomes more of a soft spot. And then you could get it right through the nostril and out there. And that gives you enough room for the hook penetration if something bites it. Either way works. I tend to like to throw it this way when there's a lot of current, so that it's going to pull sideways. That bobber is going to slow it down in the water column, and then that line will keep it that way. When it's more of a slack water or I'm drifting with the bobber, then I'll go through the shoulder. So that is the grunt. The next bait on the menu is my favorite, the pinfish. Perfect. The pinfish you're going to find anywhere along the Keys. They're very abundant. The things that I look for in a good pinfish spot is pretty common stuff, which is moving water. All right, water moves food, therefore that's where the fish are going to congregate. I also look for nice patches of healthy turtle grass. So as you're going, you'll see like white, sandy, rocky spots, but then if you see a nice dark green patch, all right, that's that turtle grass, and that's where the pinfish like to hide amongst those weeds there. Depth wise, you can find them as shallow as a 1 foot to 10-15 foot. I like to try to find a middle range, probably be 2 to 3 feet, basically so I could see them and I could spot fish them. It's also easier if I decide to throw my net on them. So a lot of times what I'll do is if I'm in a rush, like my evening ones, I'll bring a chum bag out that I just use over and over again, and I'll put the chum out. I'll catch some on hook and line. If that goes well, then I fill my bucket and I'm done. If it's just taking too long, I'll grab my 7-foot cast net and just try to grab a bunch all at once. They're extremely fast, so the smaller nets don't tend to work as well. But if you go shallow enough, it may be. But otherwise, hook and line is pretty much the way to go. It keeps them healthy, it doesn't beat them up, and they are a very hardy bait fish, so you can keep them in a 5-gallon bucket. Just occasionally throw fresh water in there and they'll last all day. I don't know if you can see it, but you see this nervous water right here circling around. I can't even see the mullet, but I know they're here because of that So they're trapped in this corner here. So I'm gonna drift on them. Got the 5-foot net so I can whip out on them and see if we can get a mullet here. The next bait on our menu. It's a little tough that I can't see, but I can get a gist of where they're at, so. Looks to be a fairly decent sized school. Let's see if that net is us any. No color. Oh, yep, there we go. So we got our couple there. Put my stakeout pole. And we've got our mullet there. I put the stakeout pole because otherwise I'd keep drifting and I'm going to spook them, but I like to keep them in that corner in case I want to get more. 5-foot net gets us a couple of nice mullet there. All right, our next bait is the nice mullet here. This is actually a bit on the small, medium size, but this will still work fine. I prefer them a little bit larger for a bigger profile, but other one that one will work there. Rigging is very basic. I only rig them the same way each time, and it's basically in their mouth and then up through the front hard portion of their, somewhere around their nostril area. So you can kind of look inside in the roof of their mouth and kind of see where there's an indentation where that hook can go. Get it in that indentation and then just wiggle it through and it'll pop right through the center of their head there. And that's perfect. These are top swimmers. They tend to be top swimmers, and that's perfect for a tarpon. No bobber needed. You can just cast them out there. Occasionally, some people like to use a somewhat long leader with a bobber on it so they can kind of mark where that fish is at, but I'd never worry about it. They cast really easily. They stay alive really well. I tend to like to anchor in above current of where I want that fish and then just drift it back. Close the bail, leave my drag on super light so that when they grab it, they can take it and run with it. When you start utilizing larger baits, you got to let them eat it. So they'll grab it, and then a lot of time the hook won't be down far enough, especially if you're using a circle hook like this. Let them take it, count to 3, 4, 5, close that bail, and then just hold on and set that hook. But that's the mullet. Well, I hope you found the grand slam of tarpon bait informative. The blue crab, mullet, pinfish are the 3 predominant baits used in the Florida Keys for the tarpon. Grunt tends to be my personal favorite, especially late summer, early fall, right at the end of the tarpon season. That tends to be my go-to bait. But otherwise, I'll do some more featured videos on these specific baits and when to use them as I start fishing and hitting different areas and targeting them different ways. But for now, that's just a brief overview of the primary baits that live baits that we utilize. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.